I want to go back to your alternatives. The situation with Pope Francis, even for people not Catholics, obviously for Catholics and the traditional Catholics that watch and listen to the War Room, it's urgent. For everybody else, it should be very important. This is another massive institution that means so much about turning our world around. This has been taken over. The Catholic Church, unfortunately, has been taken over by these globalists, and it's not good. Really not good. And I've spent a lot of time in Rome and a lot of time around the Vatican. And that's why we've always had at Breitbart. I launched Breitbart Rome with the great Tom Williams. Hopefully we get Tom on in the next couple of days. From the very beginning, we always had something in Rome here in the War Room. And why was that? This book explains it. This book is written by a New York Times reporter that wrote the book on the Warren Commission, which was a cruel and shocking act, the history of the Warren Commission, secret history of the Warren Commission, and it was quite powerful. Philip Shannon. And this is called Jesus Wept. And it was, I had the book but hadn't gotten a chance to read it because I'm so backed up on so many other things. And it was the great Eric Bowling that told me the other day when we do the transition, he says, hey, I was reading this book on the popes, last 7 popes, and you have there's a big section in there about you. I go, wow. And it was about my time I spent in the Vatican and starting Breitbart Rome, and also with the great Ben Harnwell, even before the War Room, before the Trump years, of fighting Bergoglio and what was happening to the church under him. You could tell it right then with traditional Catholics like Cardinal Burke and others. So, and it's quite amazing. I'll be able to break out the sections. We'll talk about it the next couple of days because this he does not love the church at all. He's not a Catholic. He doesn't love the church. John Yep, your analysis, I think, is my perspective. That's the analysis people have to look for because the global media, and you see this just fawning over Bergoglio in the last 12, 14 hours, shows you how they're going to play this. We're in very dangerous territory as the kind of MAGA, the MAGA movement in the church, this traditional people coming to a traditional Catholicism, going back to pre-Vatican Council, both for Latin Mass, but it doesn't have to just be Latin Mass. Some of these traditional Catholics are not Latin Mass Catholics, but are very traditional. And what is amazing is that you are having so many young people come to this that it's quite enervating. So walk me through the danger that is before us, sir.
We're living in a historic time because we have probably just ended one of the worst pontificates in the history of the Catholic Church, like truly, just from the obfuscation of Catholic doctrine to the partnering with globalist institutions like the CCP, right? And obviously the sexual cover-ups, which have continued really through McCarrick and Father Rupnick and others, right? So, this has been a disaster in many ways. That being said, what a lot of us are seeing on the front lines, we're flashing the warning signs because we're like Paul Revere riding through the streets of the towns of the traditionalist churches, like waking people up. Because why? Here's the deal. You got 3 options now for the Pope. You got a really good guy, okay, who can be named like a Cardinal Raymond Burke or Cardinal Sarah, which is almost for sure not going to happen. Who knows? The second thing would be like the bad and what we would think is the worst option, but not really the worst. Like you could see that in Cardinal Parolin as Secretary of State. Third option, this is the key, okay? So there's good, there's bad, and there's moderate. Moderate, we think, okay, that's an option. We'll take that. If we can't get a good one, we'll take a moderate. Wrong. That is absolutely the worst thing that could happen because that will lull people to sleep. Catholics for Catholics, one of the main reasons that we were born or we decided to get going in this country, it wasn't even to go after I guess you call them liberal or Catholics following like the Cardinal McElroys or Zupiches or whatever. It was specifically to wake up the mass of Catholics who are content with getting the pieces and crumbs fed from them from the table. If you're not Catholic, you're like, what are you talking about? It's almost akin to being content with a rhino president, okay, who just like gives you there, says what you got to hear, and then puts you back to sleep, and that's it. We would not be in this nearly miraculous state as a country if it had not been for the bullheadedness of President Donald Trump, okay? And that's what we need, somebody like that in Rome Is that possible? Of course it's possible through prayer and also action. We had some ideas on that, but that's essentially how I see this. It's a golden opportunity that we can't waste because some of the strongest groups and traditionalists who've converted in this past 15 years here in the church in America have come about precisely upon seeing what has gone on in Rome. Like you mentioned, Steve, Pachamama people. Let's remember, Pachamama is a pagan deity, was put onto the high altar of St. Peter's Cathedral. Insanity. You and I are Catholics, Steve. How in the world are we supposed to explain ourselves to non-Catholics when we try to say this is the one true faith, right? It's been horrible, and rightful shame on us.
That incident, and by the way, remember this was the guy that went to the border and had the mass and called Trump all types of evil in 2016. He has fought President Trump and fought everything related to MAGA. Hates President Trump, hates MAGA. I think he hates the United States of America. And people are going to say, Bannon, you're so terrible. How can you say hate on the guy that died? Well, you can see by his actions. By their fruits ye shall know them. In the gospel according to St. Matthew. By their fruits ye shall know them. By the culmination of their works, John. Yep.
Love that you brought it up. I mean, you're not saying this out of hate, people. If Jorge Bergoglio, guarantee you that if he were to come back right now from the dead and be present among us, he would be begging that we pray to God for him. I really believe that because he would recognize fully what I did on this earth as the vicar of Christ was no bueno and caused great scandal in the church. We are saying this for his soul and also for the souls of other people out there who have been lulled back into this like post-mortem state of like, okay, Pope Francis was a great person, may he rest in peace. We didn't agree with him on totally everything, but we're going to move on. It was much worse. You have to correctly diagnose the illness, the sickness, in order for the remedy to be had. That's key.
One of the great awakening moments, I think, for a lot of people of everything he did on climate change in the church and going after traditional Catholic doctrine. But I think it came up in something that maybe many of the Protestants or the people who are secular in our audience, he had this religion from this pagan religion. They had a conference about it at the Vatican, and they put it up on the altar. They put one of the central, parts of this religion up at a high place of honor. And I think the guy was Dutch or he was German. There was a young man that went and took it. Austrian, a right-winger from Austria, a conservative. This young man took it down to the Tiber River under threat of all kind of crimes and threw it into the Tiber. And they melted down. And one thing I thought about in going back over what they had done in the days of this conference, the pagans had more respect for their services and their tradition of worship on these pagan idols than the highest level of the Catholic Church. This is not folks in some dilapidated parish in Michigan or in Kentucky or in Missouri, out west, wherever you want to say, inner city New York. This is the highest, most elite level in the Vatican, with no respect whatsoever for the traditions of Catholicism. And here these pagans who they invited in, they had more respect for the service. And you sit there and go, this is so far gone. I don't even know how you turn it around. But yep, it's people like you and Catholics for Catholics and other groups over the last couple of years, because it was grim in the early years of his pontificate. Going there with Ben Harnwell when we decided to really start taking action and organize people, it was grim. And the same type of things they came after, the same way the deep state came after the Trump movement in 2021, that is a little bit like Rome was in trying to organize these things. The people were afraid. They were afraid to speak out. They were afraid to be associated people. They were afraid. They had the same type of fear I saw in 2021. I said, I've seen this before. This is what Bergoglio and that crowd of deep church and deep state, they all roll the same way because they're interconnected. And that's why this is so important. And this has dimensions beyond just the Catholics, because I've seen this, and I've seen the hatred to the MAGA movement and to people trying to stand for any of their countries. And those people were heroes and are heroes today. And that's why, John, I think over the next couple of weeks is going to be very important. What's your call to action, Brother Yep?
Know your Cardinals. Okay, there's an excellent report that's been produced by some friends. It's called College of Cardinals. I believe it's .com. You can show it on the screen here. It's a fabulous site just to know who these people are. So you're like, well, great. So what do I do with that? Spread the word. Expose and promote the good people. Bring the people that are the Cardinals that are good, have a good track record to light. One of the greatest dangers of this whole pontificate and conclave that we're facing is the Cardinals, they don't know each other and we don't know them. Why? A couple of practical reasons. They were named from the extremities, so they never really got together as much as they traditionally did because they were from, countries far away, right? Not like the majority from Italy. That's a problem because the Cardinals don't fully know who each other are and can therefore make the best decision about who should be the next pope. The second thing is we, the people, lay people, we don't really fully know them as well because precisely what you just mentioned, Steve, the amount of fear that the Bergoglian regime, if you want, instilled in not being able to speak up publicly, they achieved their goal, by the way, for the most part. I mean, if you look at the bishops of the United States, most of them lean conservative, okay? They're not evil people, okay? Here's the problem, though. They are not outspoken, and that's all they need, right? So we have to break through that as a layperson. Your call to action is to know these people, know these cardinals, expose the social media, talk it up, talk to your priest. That gets up to the bishops, cardinals, whatever, so that we can make the best decision. And, of course, you're all talking about going to Rome. That might be, the best thing possible to just show up there in force to let them know that, look, we're not going to put up with this. Like we want our church. We want to be one holy, Catholic and Apostolic Church.
John Yep, where do people go to your site? And you're one of the coordinators of all this. Where do people go? Social media and to your sites or where?
CFORC.com. That's or just Google Catholics for Catholics. All of our, we're on X, we're on Rumble, we're on Truth. You can go there for the latest. We're about action too, obviously too. You just can't sit and talk about this. We got to get to work. You got to pose and get on the front lines. That's important. That's how we're going to win.
Brother, thank you so much. John Yep, great work as usual.